Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Swaim Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to nonprofit fundraising events. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hello, and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Today, as we kick off, I want to make sure to make an announcement here about the Elevate conference coming up. It is our 2-day hybrid deep dive into fundraising events. We know that planning a fundraising event can sometimes feel overwhelming, but we also know that when you get it right, it can create something really powerful. It is our chance to bring people closer to our mission and turn moments into movements. And when you amplify that impact, the work you do makes the most impact. That's why we've created this opportunity to gather people together and learn together and talk about what works, how we're raising more money and create more impact. And we promise you're going to walk away with tips and tools that really help to transform your fundraising event. So we are in the final countdown. It is coming up in March 3rd and 4th. We hope it is already on your calendar, but if it is not, it is a hybrid event. It is 2 days. It is in Portland, Oregon. You get a chance to join us in person if you want, or tune in virtually because we want to make sure everyone can be a part of it. We also have incredible sponsors that have stepped up to provide scholarship funding, knowing that so many organizations have had budget cuts this year. So we want to encourage you to get tuned in, join us, be a part of the event. We have an incredible slate of speakers joining us. So if you want to learn more about the Elevate conference, go to swaimstrategies.com and join us in March. But today, we are going to talk about a topic that has just been rising to the surface more and more greatly because of the part of our next guest. So there has been a massive change afoot in the nonprofit sector that I think is going to make life a lot easier. It's certainly going to make our life a lot easier when it comes to events and collecting payments from our donors. And that is the work that Chariot is doing around donor-advised funds, specifically around payment resources for donor-advised funds, and more importantly, answering the question of how do we access our donor-advised funds. Our guest is Mitch Stein, head of strategy for Chariot, and they've created one of the best new inventions in fundraising, DAF Pay, making it easier to access donor-advised funds for campaigns and events. Not only that, but Mitch wrote the DAF fundraising report, launched DAF Day, speaks around the country on DAFs. He is a tech creator, has a background in tech banking, and is an avid fundraiser. He's a board member for the New York City LGBTQ Center. Thank you for doing that. And a longtime writer for Cycle for the Cause, the Northeast AIDS Ride. So Mitch, welcome to the Fundraising Elevator. We're glad you're here.
Oh my gosh, what a nice intro. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, before we dive into the world of DAFs, I want to talk first about your writing because we're also writers. We've participated in AIDS Life Cycle several times. Kristen just did the final AIDS Life Cycle.
Final.
But you participate in Cycle for the Cause. You have to tell us about it. What is the duration of Cycle for the Cause, and should we be doing this bike ride?
Yeah, so it's 275 miles from Boston to New York. So it's kind of an East Coast equivalent of Life Cycle. 3 days. I would say people who have done both describe the East Coast ride. It's a little bit more intense packed into those 3 days, but it's only 3 days as opposed to, the full week. So I think they both have a lot to offer. The other nice thing is everybody stays in hotels. So no camping along the way.
Having just camped, that sounds nice.
The princess package all the way. I love it. Okay, putting it on our radar. Thank you for cluing us in.
So, Mitch, today, let's start with folks' big picture, because we say DAF to some folks and we can hear kind of the crickets happening. I think it's one of those things that people feel like they have to know and maybe don't know. So let's go straight to the source. What is a DAF?
Yeah, of course. My favorite question. And anytime someone asks me what I do for work, I also ask them that same question. Do you know what a DAF is? Because it certainly isn't a household term just yet. But a donor advised fund is a tax advantaged charitable savings account. So you can think about it very similar to what a 401k does for your retirement and what an HSA does for your healthcare expenses. A donor advised fund performs a similar function for your philanthropy, where You can set aside funds or contribute assets like appreciated assets into this account. You get that tax write-off, if applicable, right there when you make that contribution. So that's the tax advantage. And then you now have one place to handle all of your grant making out to nonprofits. And it makes it a super streamlined and easy process for donors, and also really makes that kind of proactive philanthropy and investing in philanthropy accessible to folks who aren't going to have a private foundation, but puts really philanthropy in reach in a more, let's call it, like professional way for everyday donors.
Okay. I want to just underscore a piece of that might be helpful to us as we move forward in the discussion. For me as a donor, my tax advantage to the money that I'm putting in the DAF happens all at once on that money when I put it in the DAF.
Correct. Yeah, they typically refer to DAFs as having a triple tax benefit. So the first is what you just mentioned. So you get a write-off on that full amount. Again, I say if applicable, because you have to be itemizing that year in order to see the benefit. But what a lot of people will do is, especially if they have, variable income from year to year. So they say in 1 year, maybe they sold a house or got a bonus and they have more income. So they want to make a larger contribution in that 1 year. So they get over the threshold where it makes sense to itemize.
Yep.
And then, so they get that benefit. And then if they're contributing appreciated assets, most commonly, stocks or equities, publicly traded securities, and they then avoid the capital gains tax that they would have owed on that security, and whatever's in the account grows tax-free. So those are the three layers of benefit for a donor, and ultimately all those things are increasing the available funds that can be moved to charity as opposed to the government.
Okay, so I need to unpack that now.
Well, the reason I'm saying this, because I think this is the landscape, and I know we're going to get into some of this in a little bit, but this is the landscape, I think, that sometimes creates the gulf between the folks putting money into their donor advised funds and the nonprofit organizations that have feels about what the structure is and what's happening and how much money is sitting in DAFs. So
I love the frame though of the triple benefit
helpful.
Because we donate when we can to organizations we believe strongly in, and we've had a financial advisor before ask us if we want to start a DAF. And my first thought was that's for rich people. My second thought was why I can just donate. So I think there's a lot of myths and confusion. Yep. Can we jump there first and talk about let's bust some of the DAF myths out there and talk about what really might be going on?
Yeah, of course. I'll start with the thing you just mentioned, which is that DAFs are just for rich people. Or super rich people, I suppose you may say. And I think that's the single most common thing. And whenever I ask someone who has heard of it before, that's their first reaction is oh, well, that's not relevant to me. That's something for billionaires. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Certainly folks using DAFs still skew on the wealthier end. But when we analyzed in the DAF fundraising report the demographics of DAF gifts, so looking at in that report, for folks that aren't familiar, we had 32 participating organizations, over 12 billion in revenue over 5 years, and that included 400,000 plus unique DAF gifts. And 69% of those were below $1,000. Oh. So people are more everyday donors are using these vehicles for giving, because the single most common benefit I hear from people is that it streamlines their giving. I've got one place to do my giving. And so I think folks like yourself, Sam, or anyone who thinks oh, I already make a bunch of gifts every year. Why do I need this? Is it's we all have that experience at the end of the year where you're oh, where all did I give to? You're going through your email, looking at your credit card receipts, especially maybe when you're trying to file your taxes. So people really appreciate that they have one place that they make the contribution, one receipt for their taxes, and then they have one place they can go look and see every gift and see what they did last year. If they get to the end of the year and they're oh, wait, I didn't support the animal shelter yet, they can go back through their list. So it really streamlines things. And so I would say it has a functional benefit even for people at lower dollar giving, but still give to a lot of places. The other piece is that these accounts have just gotten so much more accessible. So if you look at the two largest DAF providers, which are Fidelity and formerly Schwab Charitable is now named DAF Giving 360. It's a hot tip for fundraisers out there. If you don't know, make sure your gift processing team knows about that change. But both of those two places, which really dominate the market, lowered their minimum account size to $0 and their minimum gift size to $50 just a few years ago. So it really is a tool for more everyday giving, as opposed to these minimums used to be much higher, hundreds of dollars per gift, thousands of dollars to start an account. And now really anyone can do it. And we have more of these, I'll call them even more tech forward offerings. Daffy is a really fast growing mobile app first DAF provider. You've got GoFundMe started a DAF product that's obviously very tech forward. So accessible in terms of experience, in terms of requirements, and in terms of how people use them. They're giving at all different levels. So I'll pause there.
Well, I feel like there's other myths, though, around DAFs that we could talk about, because I think of DAF as an old model, and you're talking about apps and tools and technology, and I'm thinking old money and, financial advisors and tax shelters. So what you've just outlined for me feels a little more hip and attainable of it's making my money work for me. It's tripling the sort of benefit that I might actually be able to donate more if I put that money into a DAF account, and it yields interest that then I can donate out of that as well.
Correct. Yeah, I think so. I'll start with this. I don't know if you use the term, but it comes up a lot, like hoarding. People think there's some nefarious incentives of using a DAF and that it's preventing giving. And I just encourage us to take a step back and think about the functionality of a DAF. And I have one. Anyone I speak with who has an account and has experienced this firsthand will share it with you as well. The process of contributing funds upfront creates a commitment for yourself that you can't go back on. So the beginning of the year, if you're setting up or funding your DAF account and you're saying, I want to give $10,000 charity, 5,000, 1,000, whatever your number is, and you actually contribute that, that's irrevocable. You can never take that back out of the account. The only thing it can ever leave your account for is as a gift to an eligible nonprofit. So it changes your mindset and connection to that money. And so the next time you get an appeal, or the next time you are inspired by some cause or mission or event, you have this ready store of funds. So your decision-making process, and I'm sure you've talked about this in other episodes, decisions are friction, humans are bad at making decisions. When you no longer need to think through the part of giving that's how much do I want to give? How much have I given this month? What are my other expenses? You're doing that calculation, even if it's subconscious. It's set aside. This is your giving money.
Yeah.
And so it's so much easier mentally to get to the point where you're, let me make a quick gift. Let me use my DAF funds, because that's my charitable fund money. And it feels a lot like going into a store with your credit card versus a gift card. When you have restricted, reserved funds for a specific purpose, you're like, what can I buy? I want to use this money. It really changes your relationship to giving. And I'd say even for someone who thinks, I already give a lot every year. Whenever my friends are doing something, I respond, they make a donation. Once you've had to proactively set aside a dollar amount or set up a monthly amount that you want to contribute, it kind of forces you to think, where do I want to support? You become more intentional with your giving, because you've sort of had to think about it proactively. And now people, I hear a lot of feedback from folks that use a DAF that they find they're more engaged with their philanthropy than they used to be. It's like a part of their finances. It's like a part of their budgeting process. And I think that's a beautiful place that we want more donors to be getting to, as opposed to reactive money machines, that they're really thoughtful and invested.
Yeah. What are there, from your vantage point, are there any pitfalls to DAFs for folks?
And for individuals, I mean, if you are supporting more than, I should say, I'm not a financial advisor, so
right. Yes, thank you.
and this is not financial advice. It's obviously something people should speak to their people about. But in general, if you are someone who supports multiple organizations a year, it is useful. I think you'd want to look at the options, and there might be one that, for example, Vanguard Charitable does still have higher minimums, meaning like their minimum gift size is $500 and their minimum account size is $25,000. So someone using that account, I have had this conversation with someone before where I'm like, are you generally making gifts over $500? And they're like, I do more of a mix. Like, oh, well, then this might not be the right one for you. So I think it's about finding the right option. But in general, from a donor's perspective, there, is not much of a downside as long as you're being thoughtful about it and picking the right thing. From a nonprofit's perspective, I think the biggest downside is that they're often more difficult to deal with from a processing and operations perspective. Yeah. So you're weighing that against the increased gift size, because our research has shown that once someone starts using their DAF to support an organization, their gift size increases by 10x on average. And the median, even because that's obviously some large outliers there when you look at averages, but even when you look at the median across all those instances of someone changing the way they give to a DAF, the median is a doubling of their gift size to the organization.
That's crazy.
So yes, the downside is we need better systems. That's what Chariot focuses on as a company. We certainly need better systems as this continues to scale so dramatically, because we can dig into the details, but the offline receipt of funds, where the data comes in, how that gets into your systems is a burden on nonprofits that they're putting up with, because this is such an important source of funds, but there's a big opportunity to improve that.
But there's hope because of the work that you're doing. And we want to talk more specifically about that in a minute. But I want to talk about sort of the opportunity we're sitting in, or this moment we're sitting in, because you just mentioned, like, for the nonprofit, I think accessing it is hard and challenging. But correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard the number 2 trillion. Is that the right number right now? That there's an estimate of $2 trillion, I can't even say the number, that are sitting or will be sitting in DAF accounts by 2026. Is that the right number?
I don't know how someone's calculating the projection. I think if you combined private foundations and DAFs, you'd get closer to that. But after this is released, we'll have the new numbers for 2024, because they're actually, but the latest numbers we have from the end of 2023 for the whole DAF market was $250 billion that's been committed into donor advised funds.
So $250 billion that's sitting in a donor advised fund that is very complicated for nonprofits to be able to access and get to. But I think that if that's a growing number, if we're seeing that there's more, especially younger donors that are participating in DAFs, I think that could actually change philanthropy, especially if we're talking about organizations losing big government grants, needing to engage individual donors. Having a donor go from a $1,000 gift to a $2,000 gift simply because they have a DAF and the money is set aside for them, what is preventing those funds right now from flowing into donation cycles?
Yeah, it's a great question. I generally, again, I'll keep having us take a step back and thinking about the market as a whole, because this is a debate I get in with people all the time, where I understand the urge to look at the asset number, because it's a big number, and think like, oh, that's going into DAFs instead of nonprofits. Like, that's a bad thing.
Right. But bust that myth, friend. Bust the myth.
But I would argue that is going into DAFs instead of that person's private investment account.
Yep.
Like, we're moving more funds closer to the goal in a way that is reducing the friction for those donors to make gifts every year. And so it is, as long as DAFs are proving to cycle those funds out at a quick pace, which has been over 20% every year since they started tracking it over 15 years ago, significantly higher than private foundations, which have that requirement at 5%. We should be encouraging and celebrating people to allocate more of their investments into committed, irrevocable charitable funds that they use for giving, and not think, because the actual reality from a donor's perspective is that it's not a one-to-one, oh, should I put this in my DAF or make a gift to a nonprofit? They're thinking like, should I put $1 million into my DAF right now? And that's such an easier decision to make. $1 million, 10,000, whatever scale the donor is at.
Yeah.
It's a way easier decision to say, I identify as a giver and I want to set up funds for me to give with. And I can do a really big amount into my DAF account. If you ask that same person to say, okay, think about every organization you want to support for the next 5 years and make all those gifts right now, they'd be like, freeze, right? It'd be so overwhelming, really time consuming. And so getting them to take that step to like push the funds into the charitable account is super positive, so long as we're seeing the throughput also, keep pace and even increasing. And I think as the donor experiences continue improving and nonprofits are more educated and informed about how to engage those donors better and steward them better, it's a whole nother section we get into. But I think that's a good thing. And I know that's hard for a lot of fundraisers to swallow, because they're used to saying like, that money is just sitting there. And I would just argue that it's not just sitting there. Actually, it's taking a really good step forward. And like, compare that to the trillions and trillions of dollars sitting in people's investment portfolios that they haven't committed to philanthropy yet.
It has a mission-based direction to it. And I would argue that even if the number is 250 billion, which is a number I still can't fathom, what we're saying is that that's a price tag on the opportunity out there for you, is 250 billion currently. And I would also argue that for a donor, a gift above X amount requires talking to their financial advisor, if we're talking, let's say we're approaching a donor about a $25,000 gift. They aren't just on a whim likely putting that on a credit card. I mean, sure, we could make an argument that there is an echelon of that sort of donor. But in general, there is a process for somebody. There is a dance happening about that $25,000 gift. Right. That whether it is coming from their DAF or whether it is coming from somewhere else, the DAF is being vilified as the obstacle to the 25K. Right. When in fact, that's just the mechanism of payment.
I'm also having an aha, Mitch. I think I appreciated you saying stewardship. We're actually diving into stewardship in our next week's episode. I had an aha when we are preparing for an event. We are in the world of fundraising events. We are working on some big, large pre-committed gifts in advance to help drive the giving in the room. And it's interesting because I'm realizing the conversation with those donors typically is different than a conversation with a $1,000 or first-time donor. Right. And I'm realizing that probably it's because those funds are already established, set aside, and ready for philanthropy, versus it being they
already paid them, so to speak. They're trying to figure out where they're allocating
when
them.
Someone comes to me with a request for a donation, I'm going through the whole process of what's my current budget? What am I expecting the next, financial projections for our household to look like? I'm making those assessments that if that fund is already sitting there ready for allocation, the question becomes, how do we get to it? So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'm going to dive into that, because I think that that's the big change that we're seeing next. So we'll be right back.
Ready for your hard work to yield more funds at your next event? Join us at Elevate, a nonprofit fundraising event conference designed to bring our community together and make planning successful events easier. Register today for this hybrid conference on March 3rd and 4th, 2026 in Portland, Oregon, or join us online from anywhere. This isn't just another conference. You'll walk away with battle-tested strategies, hands-on tools, and proven templates that top fundraisers use to raise millions. Your mission deserves fully funded success. Register today at swaimstrategies.com.
Welcome back. We are here with Mitch Stein talking about DAFs, donor advised funds. And whether you agree with them or not, DAFs are here. So we're trying to walk through how DAFs can work for you as an organization and what that can look like. So Mitch, talk to us about your company Chariot and what DAF Pay is.
Yeah, of course. So if folks aren't familiar, Chariot is the donor advised fund payments company. So we are not a DAF ourselves. We focus really specifically on ways to make it easier for donors to give with their DAF, for DAFs to send those actual funds, and for nonprofits to receive and process those gifts more efficiently. Probably best known for our tool DAF Pay, which is a payment option like Apple Pay or Google Pay, an express checkout option that can sit right on a donation form for someone to use their DAF when they quote unquote check out on any type of campaign page, your website, any digital experience. So it's helpful for those gifts that ultimately get completed through DAF Pay. But I also think it serves value outside of that by reminding anyone that's coming through your donating flow to use their DAF, regardless of whether they complete the gift there or not, because keeping it top of mind for people and highlighting a way to use it really easily is so valuable, because there are, after all the benefits I talked about DAFs having and helping people give more, those are all true. And almost everybody with a DAF continues to make some gifts with their credit card every year.
Yep.
And this has been well researched. And so that's where there's a big opportunity. And I hear this a lot from nonprofits will say like, well, what do we need to do? If someone has a DAF, shouldn't they just use it? Like, why is it on us? Well, because they're humans, and often they will take the path of least resistance, even if this is like their pre-committed money to give. If they, especially like a lower commitment or lower connection moment. So something I often call it like inspiration-based giving. So someone's doing a bike ride and you just want to support their page. You want to do it right here. You don't want to leave anywhere else. And so you make a credit card gift. But if you're able to check out with your DAF in that same moment, you're able to give a much larger donation, number one. Number two, you have now signaled to that organization that you likely have a lot more giving capacity because you have a specific account set up for giving. And three, you're able to share your name and email right there so that you can get a thank you right away, be tracked in that organization's database correctly. Whereas normally you make the DAF gift and then you may never hear about it again. So it's just a much better, more connected experience for the donor. And for the nonprofit, it's helping to elevate DAFs as, the best source of funds to be giving if you have them right there on all of your donation pages.
Is there a, and I've never thought about this before, are there a chunk of donations that get initiated by a donor but that don't get fulfilled because
Yes.
My goodness.
And that is the game changer.
Right. I've not, as a user, I'm thinking about it from the donor perspective where, we know that everything a donor's doing is signaling, right? So I'm on this page, I'm trying to signal you, I believe in this mission and cause, I'd like to make a donation. And then it doesn't get fulfilled.
Well, that
gives me signals back.
Let's talk about the event.
Yeah.
Because the event in our world, Mitch, we are event planners. And that impulse gift sometimes is a larger gift, right? But let's first look at the fact that post-event, I have to create a workaround in every single automated system that there is, because every automated system gives me cash, check, or credit card. And so some automated systems have now added a digital wallet, so Apple Pay or Google Pay. But if they're not paying through one of those, or let's say, for example, they bought an auction package and a raffle ticket that they're paying for tonight on the credit card that they swiped, but they're not making their $25,000 contribution that they raise in the paddle raise because that's going to come through their DAF. I have to create a workaround that I have to automatically go into the system and say, this is a pledge gift that needs to be followed up and fulfilled on later. Then I have to make sure that all of those pledge gifts are followed up on and fulfilled. And sometimes they're not. And so your biggest donor gets missed. All of a sudden, with this being adopted, I'm just thinking about the wrap up and reconciliation of the event. At the event, I can ask a donor, how would you like to pay? And if they say, oh, I'm going to need to follow up because I'm going to need to do some paperwork, I can say, oh, is it through a DAF? Would you like to use DAF Pay? Like, that is a game changer because it means I can be reconciled at the end of the night. I can collect all my funds at the end of the night. When I tell people we just raised $500,000, we actually have $500,000 flowing into our account, not missing the $25,000 gift that needs follow-up and processing later. But in addition to that, Mitch, let's say you're at the event with us. Kristen, you're sitting there with your paddle. I'm at registration. You make a $500 gift and Mitch makes a $500 gift in that paddle raise. And as an organizer, I don't know either of you, you both came as guests as someone else. You put yours on a credit card, Kristen. Mitch put his on a DAF. And now I'm signaling to the organization, this person thinks that they are very philanthropic. So much so that they created a DAF account. That is a different level of stewardship to enter into. I like what you've created here, Mitch, is so exciting to me. But can you talk about like who's already adopted this? What when we're in the world of processing payments, who's already added DAF Pay, and do DAF owners know about DAF Pay?
Yeah, I mean, it's growing by the day. We have several dozen fundraising platform partners, so we work directly with your existing systems, right? Because we want DAF Pay to be another option within them. So in the event space specifically, we work with GiveButter. We just started working with One Cause. We work with Handbid. So a lot of and I'm sure there's a few others.
Give Lively is one we work a lot with for our hybrid events, and they just announced DAF Pay a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, yes.
Yes, awesome. So it is growing quickly by a lot of the larger platform providers, and then we can also work directly with nonprofits. It's just the nice thing is when it's natively a part of the system you already use, there's no tech setup, no subscription required, and so that's how it reaches the widest audiences. In terms of do donors know about it, certainly more and more every day. There have been tens of thousands of DAF donors that have used DAF Pay at this point, which is super exciting. And even like single nonprofits, like the Pan Mass Challenge has about 6,000 DAF donors support them a year. And several other clients of ours have thousands of DAF donors supporting them a piece just through DAF Pay. And I would also say where we saw the best initial traction rolling this out over the past 3 years, particularly in peer-to-peer fundraising, is very powerful because of that dynamic I mentioned where you're like, I want to give to Sam's page. I want my name to show up here. I want to use my DAF. And especially for a large organization like a Leukemia Lymphoma Society, like national EIN, but your local fundraiser. I mean, forget about it. Getting a DAF gift to ultimately show up on your walk in your home, in your town, thinking about all the hoops that needs to get through. It could be months. And that being instant is just a real game changer for donors.
Well, and when we look at, the main reasons why donors give, that immediacy allows DAF donors to benefit in the same way as somebody playing by a digital wallet or check or what, I think folks are missing the opportunity to create an experience for their donors and allowing some of the paperwork to get in the way. And earlier when I was talking about sort of that gulf of things that don't get capitalized on, I'm actually thinking a bunch of the smaller donors and what's getting missed out on. Yes, I would expect to do some footwork as a fundraiser for that $25K gift. That's fine. We can talk about that offline and go do that. But if all of a sudden there's more ubiquitousness to people having DAFs and the inability and ease for them to pay as a means for some of the things, and I have to run around and go follow up, if there's a % loss on that, that's a loss for the sector in general, in that somebody is signaling to you, I want to be in relationship with you, and you're not signaling back.
Right.
Thank you. Let's date. You know, it's like, it's that whole thing. And so I love, Mitch, that technology is stepping into the space so that humans can human. That's my favorite, it's the benefit of technology to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just call out too, while yes, DAFs are being democratized and used by a broader spectrum of donors, the average DAF account size is over $140,000. And even places that disclose a median account size, which is a lot more helpful because there's just a couple of really big ones in general. So like Fidelity and the Jewish Communal Fund, both of their median account sizes are around $25,000.
Yeah.
So that just tells you, if you get a gift from someone through Fidelity Charitable, there's a 50-50 chance this person has more than 25K set aside for giving. Like you should be, even if it's a $50, $100 gift, if you have the capacity, take the DAF, the gift type being DAF as your best signal that you should do some research on this donor. And like you said, Sam, earlier, like put them in a different stewardship flow, even if the gift was a little bit smaller. Because regardless, they're a high propensity donor, even if they aren't necessarily a major donor. This is someone who has taken the steps to set up a specific financial account for giving. And while that has gotten easier, there's still friction there. And it shows you that there's a really high commitment level.
Yes, it is a very different commitment level than me having a spare savings account for home repairs that I kind of borrow against here and there, right? Like that's a very different mechanism. When we were talking before we started recording, you were talking about there being a 401k DAF related proposal into Congress. Can you talk about what that is?
Yes, there is currently, so every cycle there have been some things thrown into tax discussions and legislative ideas around donor advised funds. In the most recent tax proposal, there wasn't really anything all too specific to DAFs that ultimately made it in, a lot of discussion around it. There's currently a proposal around qualified charitable distributions out of a 401k.
Okay.
So I'm sure fundraisers out there, I hear from a lot of people, one of the only things that's growing as much as DAF giving at nonprofits right now are those QCDs out of IRAs. Because we have an aging population, and once they turn 70 and a half or whatever, they can start directing their mandatory distributions from their 401k as direct gifts to nonprofits. That currently is not allowed to be directed at a DAF sponsor. So you're not, if you have your DAF account at the community foundation, you can't say, hey, I want my $50,000 QCD to go to the community foundation, and then I can make my grants from there. And so the proposal that is out there, again, it hasn't reached an official status as a bill or something that's being voted on, but does have bipartisan support and bicameral support, is to change that and let people make those QCDs to their DAF accounts, which again, I think on the face of it, some nonprofits might think that sounds like a bad idea, but the process for sending a QCD is bananas. Like, and talk about friction. Like a lot of them will, the account, their 401k provider sends a check to the donor, and then the donor needs to figure out the mailing address to get it to the nonprofit. And so the more times they need to do that is like a lot of friction we want to get rid of. If they can make one distribution to the place that's set up to do grant making, more easily, then that would be a boon for the sector. I think we'd see way higher utilization of those QCDs on an annual basis from folks that qualify. and then, able to handle those in a more predictable fashion through DAF giving versus QCD. So we'll see if it goes anywhere, but I think it's an interesting one. Keep an eye on.
It's also, to me, there's also this opportunity that we sit in where if you think back a couple of years to like the advent and addition of Apple Pay or Google Pay, creating that ease of like, let's order that, click, click, it's done, right? We moved that same model into our hybrid events or virtual events during COVID, where we were using Give Lively as a text to give tool, in which in the moment we were encouraging folks to give and their name would appear on the screen the second they gave. Most of those folks were giving through an Apple Pay tool because it's on their phone. They're watching it on a TV broadcast. They click donate, or they text and they click donate, and then they click Apple Pay and it's paid. That idea of being able to select it directly from your DAF, I think, would increase revenue generation, but also that ability to like remove all those barriers, all the friction points, turns it also into something that we can realize immediately for the organization. We like money transfer is something that's become so easy and so ubiquitous in a digital age that we shouldn't have those barriers that mean that like a gift never gets realized. We've had organizations the past few years where they've reported $100,000 plus loss from gifts never realized. And oftentimes it is the big donor who has their money in a 401k account, has their money in a DAF account that needs to go through a process. And then the process just doesn't happen. So if I'm sitting in the fundraising seat, I'm in the nonprofit seat, and I'm trying to figure out how to access these DAFs. I mean, DAF Pay built into my processor is going to make it a lot easier. But what if I don't have that built into my processor? How do I advocate? Like, is Chariot working right now to get it built into every processor? Can I call my software tool and say, hey, I need DAF Pay added?
That's definitely been the most effective way, is for folks to hear it from their customers. So for sure, if you don't see it there yet, ask. That's generally been the source of a lot of our partnerships, is seeing that demand, especially if you're looking at new software. Asking that as an evaluation metric is really powerful, and frankly, even more powerful than hearing from their current customers if they're losing out on new ones. So that's definitely a good thing to do. But I'd say, like, look, technology, it's great technology. That only gets you so far. You also need to have your team educated on what a DAF is. You need to be incorporating language about donor advised funds into your appeals, into your website, into your script at your event, into your script for donor conversations. I think just elevating the topic internally, discuss it with your board. Do you do any education to donors? Like, I just think engaging with it as an important pillar of your fundraising strategy and not some ancillary thing is also important, because having the tool is great and going to be helpful, but only gets you so far. You need to really incorporate it as a mindset for your fundraising. And so I think we've got lots of resources there in terms of how to help educate more people on your team. The fundraising report's a great one that we were talking about earlier. We have tons of items on our blog and do lots of webinars, that sort of thing. But just like tune in, plug in, follow me on LinkedIn. You'll get more DAF insights than you ever thought you could need. But I think that's something absolutely everyone in the space can do for free, is just to increase your own level of knowledge and awareness.
I think that there's an opportunity too to educate your donors as your team is getting educated. Because I think, to me, it's a twofold process, right? It's understanding the financial systems at play and being able to educate your team along the way. And then maybe it's a threefold. It's having a tool to be able to process it. Yeah. And then it's also being able to make sure your donor knows about it. That I love the idea that you just said of like adding it into an event. We have our auctioneers that work with us will frequently recommend this could become a monthly payment for you. You want to go big tonight? We're going to take care of you. This could be a pledge tonight. The idea that they could add that in, that we can now accept your donor advised fund payment tonight before you even leave, is a really simple way to just keep donors to understand, like, oh, that headache thing I had to do before to process those funds is now super easy. So I think on the fundraiser side, it's something that we haven't accessed often enough, because it has been there's friction there. And so I think removing that is just such a gift.
Yeah, I call out two things on that point that I just hear frequently from nonprofits. One is I'll hear something to the effect of like, "Oh, we don't know if we're ready for DAFs," and I have to like, I'm not to laugh at them, and it is what it is. And often they're hearing that from a board member or an executive or something. Everyone should just hear that it doesn't matter if you're ready for DAFs or not. It's not your choice.
Right.
It is how people are giving. So you can choose to be passive about it and just receive what comes your way, or be proactive about it and maximize this opportunity and that $250 billion that has been committed to charity and one step closer to your organization.
It's like saying, I don't know that we're ready for credit cards right now.
Yeah, which I'm sure people were saying that 25 years ago. You know? So I think that is just really important. And I think to just try something, take one step forward. I was at the conference where we caught up, Sam, at the Raise conference and did a session on DAF fundraising, and someone raised their hand in the audience and we started Q&A, and they were like, I was at your session last year and you were talking about how folks should try to send an email out or do something for DAF Day. And I proposed it to my team and they all said no. And I went ahead and did it anyway. And we're a small nonprofit in Wisconsin. And I got 7 new DAF donors who gave a total of $12,000
That's amazing.
from that email. So just try it. Like, what do you have to lose?
Well, and I would imagine too, as the DAF owner, places that are easier to give are places that are easier to give.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What do you think successful nonprofits are doing best in their relationships to donor DAFs? Like, we've talked a lot about like where the rub is, where the myths are, but where do you see it working well for organizations?
Yeah, I think another maybe myth or concern I come across is that people are like, okay, well, we're okay raising money from DAFs, but we don't want to talk about it too much. We don't want like other donors to find out about it maybe, or like learn about DAFs from us.
Like it's the flu.
Yes. And I think that's like totally the wrong way to go about it, because if you're a source of valuable information for your donors, and again, you're not a financial advisor, shouldn't be telling them what to do, but informing them of what other donors are finding useful, knowing that once people adopt DAFs and use them, they end up giving more. That's a benefit to your organization. It's a lot like strategies people have used in planned giving, where they think, oh, if I kind of start the conversation around legacy planning and they end up setting up their will because of us, they're way more likely to name us as a beneficiary after they learned about it or maybe used our tool to do so. So I think similarly with DAFs, it's okay to be a source of education and information. And that's where I see organizations that are succeeding doing the best. I was just on a webinar with the International Rescue Committee last week, and they shared that their DAF giving was up 39% this year.
Wow.
And a big change for them was prioritizing that donor education and really collaborating across all their different fundraising streams. I mean, it's obviously a mega organization with a lot of different channels. So a big lift for them to make sure they're incorporating DAFs across mail and email and text, and they've seen it perform really well. But I think some of the more creative things were like they hosted a donor teach-in where they invited a financial advisor and someone from DAF Giving 360 to talk about DAFs, why people use them, how they work for donors who are interested. And I think that's relationship building with some of these stakeholders, either at DAFs or financial advisors. They're happy that they're getting an audience of donors to speak to about what they do. And it never hurts either to build those relationships. So that's where I see people getting creative, is leaning in to that cross-team collaboration and donor education and partnering even more directly with DAF providers too.
I like the simplicity, though, of what you said at the Raise conference, that someone simply sent an email out on DAF Day, which I encourage everyone to adopt that right now. When is the next DAF Day?
It's October 8th, 2026.
So put October 8th, 2026 on your calendar and plan on a DAF Day email going out, plan on a DAF Day solicitation going out. But you mentioned incorporating it into your event script. You mentioned incorporating it into your communications to donors, emails to donors. I have two stories where an organization was the educator. One, we had you're on the board of your local LGBTQ center. We work with our local LGBTQ center here, and we had a board member that was a financial advisor, and he was building his business. And so he sponsored events. So to tie them all together to the work we do in events, he sponsored events and put his logo on the back of the bid card. That was his sponsorship partner agreement, in which he would advise on the bottom, come talk to me, set up a meeting time for free, and we'll consult around ways to better support the Q Center together. And so that support generated for the organization. He built his business as a financial advisor. He helped philanthropists set up their donor advised funds, but he also helped the organization benefit as one of the charitable causes. So it became this like overlapping multi-benefit for the community. Out of COVID, we had an organization that was hosting monthly donor webinars. They would just invite the donors to join a webinar. Every month had a different topic. It was so successful for them that they have continued to do this. They now have big in-person events. They have other gatherings. They have volunteer days, but they still have continued this donor webinar every single month, different topic. And I was on one of the donor webinars where this was the topic. They had one, I think, webinar about donating your real estate. And then they had a webinar about donating from DAFs or starting DAFs. They had a financial advisor come in and talk about what a DAF is, how to start a DAF. And it started and launched their DAF program. It started and launched a whole new donor subset for them. So I think you're right that while I think nonprofits don't have to take that big of an approach, but taking an approach of making sure your donors know you now accept DAF pay, advocating for your processor to be able to accept DAF pay. It's an exciting time to see that some of those like older systems established around philanthropy are now becoming revised, updated, newer, adopted, accessible in this age where we have, DoorDash via Apple Pay in 2 seconds to my house. So I appreciate the work that Chariot is doing to sort of like daylight this like bucket of money that's just been sitting there that no one knows really how to access, and creating an easy process for it.
That's the goal. I mean, it just is such a universal rule in any type of technology, right? If there's more steps, more clicks, more decisions to be made, there's gonna be less of that thing happening. And so to your point, this is such a promising source of funds. We need to put way more focus on how we streamline and simplify that. It should be the easiest process, not the most complicated. And that's really, I feel like we're getting there very soon. It's exciting to see that shift happening so quickly.
Amen. Well, with that, we're going to take one more short break, and we'll be right back to have Mitch join us in the fundraising elevator.
Change. It doesn't happen on its own. It happens on purpose. Thanks to nonprofits that believe a brighter future is not just possible, but needed and deserved. And that connect people to causes and turn moments of generosity into movements. That's why Bloomerang is built for purpose. To raise the bar on what's possible and help every act of giving lead to more. Because when the bottom line is a better world, no goal is too lofty. Bloomerang, built for purpose.
Welcome back. We are here talking about donor advised funds and DAF pay, and how DAF pay is going to make everything so much better for our nonprofit friends when they're processing. Mitch, we ask all of our guests to join us in the fundraising elevator where we're all headed up. What is a bit of wisdom or a tip you'd share with nonprofits right now to keep them heading up? I
strongly believe that every single nonprofit fundraiser should have a DAF account.
Oh, I love that so much.
Because it has this veneer of like mystique around it that intimidates people. And I think if everyone just had one themselves, number one, it'd be really easy for them to relate to a donor and talk about it. Every single time I speak at a conference, one of the first questions I always ask is, who knows what a DAF is? Almost everyone. When I started, not everybody.
Yeah.
Now, 3 years in, like almost everyone has their hands up. And then I ask, how many people would feel comfortable explaining what a DAF is to a donor? And almost everyone's hands go down.
Yeah.
And that's the delta that is solved by having one yourself. Because then so you're not explaining some esoteric concept. You're just talking about what you do yourself. And you will understand the friction points of a donor and execute your own processes internally better to better steward those donors. So that's my number one tip. You can go to wherever you do your banking or brokerage today and ask about it. There's like super easy tools like Daffy or Charity Vest or GoFundMe where you can start a DAF account and try it out.
I love it because we so frequently think we otherize fundraising, right? We think us, them. And this is is when we're all thinking of ourselves as part of philanthropy, not just on the fundraiser side, but also on the giving side. So I appreciate that as a word of wisdom. You already said this, but I want you to reiterate it. For let's say, brand new fundraiser that is in their first time role fundraising, and they have listened today and said, okay, how do I do this? Can you please reiterate, are there any minimums, and where do you go to set up a DAF account?
Yeah, so it depends if there's a minimum. I think the most common no minimum accounts, and actually we've got an article that's like the easiest places for a fundraiser to get a DAF. So I can share that as a follow-up too.
Great.
But Fidelity and Schwab both have no minimum DAFs, and their minimum gift size is $50. Daffy and Charity Vest are two longtime partners of ours that are kind of more tech forward DAF programs where the no minimum account size and minimum gift size is $18 to $20. And I know Daffy has a mobile app that makes that all pretty seamless and easy as well. And those would be the first places that I'd look. I guess GoFundMe also has a DAF option that is super accessible to people. But I think those are probably the most common for someone who's wanting to do kind of more everyday giving.
Great.
Well, Mitch, I'm the first person that when we start talking about financial advising, I glaze over. And today you got me really excited about donor advised funds. I'm really excited about DAF Pay because I think it's going to make my life easier on event sites.
Yep.
I so appreciate the work that you're doing. If people want a quick and easy resource, you already said you have a lot of resources on your website that we will link to. I'm curious, this particular beautiful resource, this is how I got to know you through the DAF fundraising report. How do people get a hold of this?
Yeah, so that's on our site. If you just go to resources on givechariot.com, it's the first item on there, the DAF fundraising report, or if you just Google the DAF fundraising report, it's the first thing that'll come up. And yeah, you can read the highlights, download the full report there, and we'll be kicking off the research process in January for the 2026 report. So if anyone's interested in joining and being a part of that benchmarking, you can also apply on that same page as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you for bringing exciting news about fundraising. Thank you for bringing solutions to the table. And thank you for joining us today at the Fundraising Elevator. We are going to provide all of these links, including Mitch's LinkedIn, so that you can connect with him. I follow you and learned so much from you in just the education and the resource you put out there. So thank you for making something that has felt really unapproachable for a long time very approachable and easy to access. We appreciate you.
Of course. It's my pleasure.
Have a great day.
Right here at Avenue in Portland, Oregon, or joining us online, it is time to take our fundraising event to school.
Gathering is just so important right now. It's always been important, but I think being with your people is extremely important.
Your guests should believe in your organization and understand that they are the community that make it possible. Their power combined with others is immense. We need spaces where people remember that the world is changed by those who show up together, who act together, who give together.
I think I've been coming to Elevate since Elevate started. It is every year, there is fresh new content that is very much tailored to the moment that we're in. And it's easy to know that we're in a moment.
Events are changing. The landscape of Portland is changing, so it's nice to be in a room where new ideas are coming up.
Last year I came to this event and we were introduced to this event arc. With that event arc, we increased our funding that evening by 23%. 23.
I love the atmosphere. I love the energy. I'm already thinking about the events this year and how they can be better.
Samantha Swaim and Kristen Steele are geniuses. Geniuses. I cannot tell you how incredible and thoughtful they are when it comes to how you should set up your event for ultimate success.
Because the people in this room, you can feel the passion that they have for their nonprofits, for the events that they put on for their communities, and Feather wants to be a part of that. So we have loved the vibe since the moment we stepped in the room.
At North by Northeast, I am currently our Development and Communications Director, and it's really been great for me to use all those skills that I've had, both learning from Samantha and from Elevate.
The AV department has been a partner with Elevate since the very first year in 2018. It's one of the ways that we can support our nonprofit partners to make their events shine and get better every year.
I attended last year, and that was also my first time in the Avenue, and I was blown away by the production quality of this space. I loved the live streaming aspect. It was so fun.
Elevate's such a lively room, and there's so many great people. I've run into so many people that I know as community partners and colleagues, and it's just a really joyful experience to be here in community with everybody that's helping to support the important nonprofits in Portland.
I've already started building a network, and I've learned so much all before lunch. My hand is cramping from all the notes that I've taken.
Just having everybody share insights from every direction, even if you thought you knew everything, you're learning something.
We are, of course, in the development department of our nonprofit organization.
And just as in the name, we are looking to elevate our events and take it higher, raise more money for our families, and just do more with our nonprofit.
Humans give to humans. Every single donor, no matter the size of their gift, is doing something really meaningful.
Words, they're extremely powerful. So that's why I'm here to kind of showcase little shifts in language that would help us continue to uplift our communities, particularly those of color.
They are in control of the story, of what's in it, whether it's a video or whether it's their speech, preparing them, and then also making sure that you highlight how their story is helping the organization.
The work you do matters. And what's more than that, you matter. It is critical that this feels like a community, not only that you can be a part of, but that you are a part of.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced by Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by John Collier. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Hey y'all, it's Kristen. Before we leave, I want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, share it with a friend. Leave us a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.